of the heart flows the issues of life. And many of these issues stem from one's emotional, mental, and spiritual condition. Such issues may oppress, stifle, and even stagnate one from living a healthy and fulfilling life. So how does one progress past such issues and achieve a state of emotional, mental, and spiritual healing? There's help, so open your heart and prepare your mind. It's time for healing to take place in your life. You're in tuned to Talking with Dr. Toy, a holistic approach to emotional healing. And now, your host, licensed professional counselor, Dr. Toy Lisa Mitchell.
It's just me and you. I feel so lost, 'cause I don't know what to do.
Well, good Sunday morning. Thank you so much for tuning in to Talking with Dr. Toy. Comes your way every Sunday morning. Listen, I want to first of all thank you so much for tuning in to the broadcast, the podcast. It's so wonderful to have you in this space. You know what I always want to do? I always want to start out with my purpose. My purpose is to provide a holistic approach to emotional healing. Therefore, my mission to provide a holistic, restorative, therapeutic approach in addressing and resolving issues that adversely affect the emotional, psychological, spiritual, and physical well-being of individuals who desire to enhance their quality of life. I do hope all is well with you. And as we talk about this, listen, I always want to do a self-care check. How are you? And what did you do for self-care? Remember, it is so important to improve aspects of our self-care. Doesn't have to be huge. Small steps can make huge differences. So I do want to encourage you to please make sure that you are definitely taking care of yourself and implementing those self-care. We may do another show on self-care because I think in many ways there's misconceptions about what self-care is. I was talking with some individuals today, and so one of the individuals said that we don't have time, that we're so busy taking care of everyone else. We don't have time for ourselves. Some people said, well, I don't have the money and all of that. So I do think that there's still some ways in which there are misconceptions about self-care. And I think that makes it even more important for us to do some work around this, because when you have those misconceptions about what self-care is, then you're not going to create time to implement it, because there's already some challenges and barriers to you even being able to acknowledge that this is something that I can do. And so I think this is very important for us to just remember that self-care, and especially now, listen, we're in the month of June. And so can you believe it? We're 6 months in to this year, to 2026. And it seems like we've just gotten started. And so some of us may have made some commitments and said, oh, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But yet and still you may find yourself in a space where you're like, you know what? I've not done anything that I said I was going to do, right? So I want us to be mindful when we talk about aspects of self-care. I love this resource that says, listen, self-care can just mean taking a step back, right? It can mean forgiving yourself, saying no, setting boundaries, staying at home instead of on the go all the time. Love this one, asking for what you need, right? Prioritizing yourself, and again, asking for help. Spending time alone. These things can be self-care. And so I want us to really hone in on what self-care can mean for your life. It may not look the same as it does for other people, but what does this look like in your life? And consider those things that I just said, those things of self-care. I can take a step back instead of pushing myself. Maybe I need to take a step back and observe, how are things going and what do I need to do, right? Or who do I need to be in this situation, right? Asking for help. Many of us, we've talked about that before. Asking for what you need, right, in our interactions with others. Forgiving yourself. How many of us are harboring unforgiveness towards ourselves, right? Still beating ourselves up for mistakes that we made 10 years ago. And what is that? How is that helping you? Basically, all that it's doing is maybe keeping you in a cycle of negativity towards how you view yourself. So again, really take into account what self-care can mean. And this is going to be very important for the topic that we're going to address this month, right? And I'll come to that shortly. Another aspect of care is community care, right? People committed to leveraging their privilege to be there for one another in various ways. How did you show up for others, and how did you allow others to show up for you? And that self-awareness. How did you show up for you, right? How did you show up for you? And so June is Men's Health and Mental Health Month. Right? We know Father's Day is in the month of June. And so I want to talk about men's health and mental health. This is Men's Health and Mental Health Month. June is. And so I've already given you this aspect of the definition of mental health. A state, according to the World Health Organization, mental health is a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn and work well, and contribute to their community. Let's talk about Men's Health and Mental Health Month. One of the things that, as I did some research with regards to this topic, is that this is called, as far as men's mental health, it has been deemed as the silent crisis. The silent crisis. And this month is also dedicated to really addressing the stigma that prevents men from seeking help. And I love this statement. It says this, that not only with regards to breaking the stigma that prevents men from seeking help, but also from addressing unprocessed trauma and normalizing open conversations about emotional well-being. I love this. 3 things that we want to really highlight when we talk about men's health and mental health month. Because remember, one of the quotes from a previous U.S. Surgeon General was, there is no health without mental health. And when we talk about Men's Mental Health Month, it is important for us to also address some of the challenges and barriers that men may have in seeking help for what they need, and addressing their unprocessed trauma, right? Because we've already talked about aspects of trauma. However, when that trauma is unprocessed, remember what we said, that can come up in other ways. And also this, which I think is so very important, normalizing open conversations about emotional well-being. This is so important. Hence why it's called the silent crisis. Because in many cases, where men may not perceive that they have safe spaces to be able to talk about their emotional well-being, right? Because of course these cultural nuances and stereotypes of how men should be and how men are supposed to be, and this machismo type thing. And some of these stereotypes, just like we've talked about with regards to women, Black women in particular, in ways, women of color, just these stereotypes also can really hinder men from seeking the help that they need. And when we talk about that, I think it's so important that this is a disturbing statistic. It says this: with men nearly 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women, It highlights the urgent need to address this silent crisis. Did you hear what I said? With men nearly 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women, it highlights the urgent need to address this silent crisis. And this statement as well. Men frequently face unique barriers to seeking help, and some of those is what I just mentioned. Societal expectations and ingrained stigmas often make it difficult to open up about emotional struggles. And so therefore what happens, they stay silent. Listen, it gives 3 things. And I think this is so important because when we talk about men's health and mental health, it is so important to look at what are the stats saying. Listen to this. Over 6 million men in the U.S. experience symptoms of depression yearly, but are often undiagnosed due to the misconception that requiring therapy is a sign of weakness. Yeah. So men and women who love the men in their lives, this is a disturbing statistic. Over 6 million men experience symptoms of depression. And remember, when we talk about symptoms of depression, sometimes again the media may depict this in a one-dimensional way. When we think about depression, we think about they're just staying in bed all day, they're not able to do anything, and they're in some way. So we just may see just a few dimensions of depression, one dimension of depression. But we remember depression can look differently. In men, it can come out as anger. It can come out also too as really kind of overworking and all the things, and even can come out in substance use and abuse. So just because a man may not be in the bed all day doesn't mean that they may not be experiencing depression. And we're going to talk about that. Maybe some of the ways so that we can recognize some of the things that may be emerging as to why, they may be depressed. So we're going to talk about that as well. And so another thing that it also mentioned was trauma, right? Unprocessed trauma from financial stress, relationship issues, and even other challenges. And one of the things that I think we need to acknowledge is that in many cases, men are often overlooked with regards to their mental health. When we look at these things, unprocessed trauma is often overlooked as a driver of poor mental health in men. And that can come from various things. We've talked about trauma a lot on this show. And then the suicide rates. Men account for approximately 75% of all suicide deaths, making it one of the leading causes of death for men. And so men are not exempt from mental health issues. And what would be helpful for us is to cultivate more safe spaces to discuss and to talk about men's mental health. When we look at this stigma, where when we talk about men and mental health and the stigma of weakness, right? We have to address that, because when we look at mental health as a weakness for a man, then that in some ways will close the door for them seeking help, because they see it as a deficit, as a personal weakness, as a flaw. And so the help that they need, they will negate it. They will not move towards the help that they need because of how they are perceived. And so some of these things that we need to address is the perception of weakness. I tell clients this all the time. I say this, I'm like, Coming to therapy is not a weakness, it is wisdom. It is wisdom. And we know that there's still some struggles even in going to the doctor for men. But one of the things that we can do as a society and as a community is normalize conversations where we're talking about emotional mental health. And so again, the perceptions of weakness around requiring therapy. Listen to this: fears of social disapproval. That if I tell someone that I am thinking about going to therapy, or if I tell someone that I am really struggling right now with maybe some depression, some anxiety, some fear, if I really tell someone, well, how will they look at me, right? So there's a fear of social disapproval. And I think it would be helpful for men to talk about this so much more, so that these conversations are normalized, that we don't negate that just because you're a man, that you're not human. You are human. We are fallible, right? Our mere humanity warrants that. But there's fears of social disapproval. They won't see me as the strong one. If I let them know that I am really struggling emotionally right now. And so what we do sometimes, and we'll talk about it, when we don't address these mental health issues, then they'll come up in unhealthy ways. And one of the things that will happen among several is that we'll start adopting maladaptive, unhealthy coping strategies to deal with these mental health struggles instead of facing them and getting the help that we need. We're going to talk about it. Social disapproval, cultural factors. Well, we just don't do that. We don't. Because there was this notion, which is definitely inaccurate, that African American men or black men, they don't have suicide attempts. We don't attempt suicide as black men. And as we know, with regards to the statistics, that's not true. And so we want to be sober and mindful of what's happening within our communities to know that depression is real. Anxiety is real. And so sometimes when we talk about depression, men with depression, they're not diagnosed, right? Some of the reasons why they're not diagnosed is that failure to recognize depressive symptoms. And that's one of the things that I expressed, that we may have these misconceptions of what depression should look like. And so if I'm going to work every day, right? If I'm getting up, then, I'm not depressed. But what is your thoughts? What are the thoughts that you are experiencing, right? Are you isolating yourself? Have you lost pleasure and joy in the things that you used to enjoy, right? The activities that you used to enjoy. Are you a bit more irritable, agitated in ways? See, these are things that we need to also be mindful of as a way in which depression can manifest. Also, some of the reasons why men are undiagnosed: downplaying signs and symptoms, minimizing these signs and symptoms. Oh, well, they'll come out of it. They'll be okay. They usually bounce back and all of this. And some of us may simply just be in denial because we may not know how to help. So we don't want to face the reality that there may be some issues going on with some of the men in my life. We may not want to face that reality, and they may not want to face that reality. So downplaying, minimizing these signs and symptoms. Oh, well, it'll go away. I'll be okay. Or it's not that bad until it really gets that bad. And here's another one: reluctance to discuss depression symptoms, right? due to stigma, seeing it as a weakness, maybe avoiding it or even denying it, don't want to discuss it, don't want to say anything, because in some ways discussing it may lead to facing it. Also, too, resisting mental health treatment. I'm not going to go to talk to no this and this. I mean, I've had someone say, well, there ain't nothing, it's nothing they can do to help me. They all out for the money. I've heard various reasons why, in some ways, men don't go to mental health treatment. And here's what I would say. Many cases is fear. And they don't want to face the stigma that something may be up with me. Something may be going on. And because in some ways there's this thought, well, I should be able to fix this within myself. I should be able to do this by myself. And then what that does, that brings about a sense of shame. Because I can't fix it or I can't make it better, then what kind of man does that make it? Because in many cases, we know some men are problem solvers. I should be able to solve this problem. And maybe what they think is this, is that I've been able to solve other people's problems. Why can't I solve my own? So we get into this cycle of shame because I can't seem to fix it. And so when the shame comes, want to isolate, silence, don't want to tell anyone because they're ashamed that they can't get out of it or they can't work themselves out of it, in a sense. And I'm here to say and tell you that it's not about your will. It is about biology. It's about neurobiology. It's about all of these things that just getting some assistance may help you move through this in a way where you can regain your joy, right? Regain your peace in ways. But these lies, this stigma keeps us in a place where we may perceive that this is how life is just going to be. And then we don't seek anything else. But when we talk about the purpose, and one of the purposes of Jesus coming, that we may have life and that we may have life more abundantly, life to the full, and that he came in order to release the oppressed and release the captives. This sounds like a God who wants our healing and restoration, who desires our healing and restoration. And this is the same God who makes provisions, whether it be therapy, whether it be community, whether it be even psychotropic medications, that makes provision for us to live that abundant life. And that often comes by receiving help, right? But sometimes we look at it as a way of when God may send us the help, we don't like how it looks. And so we don't open ourselves up to receive it. So I'm encouraging you that there is help, but we must open ourselves and take the steps necessary to receive that help. So let's talk about, according to Families for Depression Awareness, signs of adult depression can look this way. But again, remember, it really can differ with individuals. But one of the things that we may want to notice, that if we look at the men in our lives, pay attention. That's definitely first and foremost. Pay attention. Men are human. They're human too, right? So pay attention. And to see if you're noticing any changes of how the person's character is or how they usually function and operate. So here's some warning signs, but again, not comprehensive, but something to think about. Number one, talking very negatively or expressing hopelessness. that this seems something that when you've known this individual and you see them, that is more consistent and more intense, that they're talking negatively or expressing hopelessness, you may want to just really process and think about are things, are they struggling with some things, right? Number 2, acting without concern for others. When this may not be who they are, their character, where things are happening in the family or whatever, and it seems like they have this degree of apathy, well, they don't care and they're not concerned. Could it be that they're emotionally numb and experiencing some depression, where they are what we call in some ways hypoarousal, abusing alcohol or drugs, right? Withdrawing from families and friends. One of the things that you may notice is that, wait a minute, they're usually outgoing and extrovert, but now they're just kind of withdrawing. They don't want to be around people in some ways. And what you may notice is that it's become more consistent, where they're isolating, not doing the things that they normally would do, that they enjoy. Problems concentrating, making decisions, or even remembering, right? And look at this, complaining of physical aches and pains. This speaks to the somatic aspects of mental health. When you are experiencing aches and pains and you don't know where they're coming from, right? Those things may be symptomatic of depression that is showing up in your body. Always looking to, as far as appetite, eating too much or eating too little, that their appetite has changed. And this one is a huge one. Sleeping too much or too little, right? I want us to think about that, because many cases we can see when we talk about depression, they're sleeping all the time. And so that may be indicative. But what about sleeping too little? They're not sleeping a lot. They're getting up in the middle of the night, right? So even when they get to sleep, they can't stay asleep. And so they're getting very little sleep. That in some ways too can also be symptomatic of depression, especially in this list that we've given. So part of our process is that we want to, in many ways, shine a light on Men's Health and Mental Health Month. I love this. I love this flyer as far as the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It says this: it's not weak to speak. I love that flyer. It is not weak to speak. And so part of this process for us may be cultivating an environment of safety and acceptance for men who are experiencing mental health concerns, mental health issues. It's not weak to speak. And so I love some of the things that we can do. How can you help? This is from the National Alliance of Mental Health. Number 1, a simple conversation may spark transformation, right? Where we have a simple conversation with, whether it be a father, a brother, uncle, a friend, check in with the men in your life. And so some of what you may be saying is this: well, I don't want them to get upset, and I don't want them to, look at me sideways. We may say some of those things, but this is what I would encourage you to do. Do you love them? Do you want them to live the abundant life that Jesus said that he came for us to live? Maybe they are suffering in silence, and maybe they are just waiting for someone to say, hey, let's talk a minute, right? Let's talk a minute. What's happening in your life? Because maybe they're thinking that we will look at them as weak if we have these conversations. But if we create that space and check in with them and let them know, hey, it is okay, then that may spark a transformation in their lives. Some may be just waiting for you to ask, and really seriously ask, right? Not just, well, how you doing? Okay, thanks, and then move on. But no, really. Pausing. No, how are you really doing? I've noticed these things that are happening. I've noticed some things, and I want you to know that I care about you, that I'm here, right? Sharing resources, with the people in your life. And even though you can't be that therapist for them if you're not qualified, you can share resources. You can say, hey, here's a therapist that I thought was really helpful for me. It doesn't harm you to share a resource, right? Sharing information about mental health support services, letting them know there is help out there, right? And not gossiping about it, but being a safe space where they will feel safe and know that you love and care for them, and all that you're doing is out of love. So creating that safe space. I love this. Encouraging environments such as home, work, school, barbershops, right? Gyms, churches, in the community where men feel comfortable opening up without judgment. And I love this. It says this: sometimes just knowing it's okay to talk makes all the difference. And to have real talk. We're going to talk more about men's health and men's mental health. But this is something that I want us to really work through, because it is called the silent crisis for a reason. Those things that are undercover, we want to bring them to light so that light can dispel that darkness, and that they can get and receive the help that they need and that they deserve. Let's talk about it. It is not weak to speak. I love that. All right. Well, listen, that's all the time that I have for. Remember what I always say: relentlessly and intentionally pursue authentic and genuine relationships vertically with God, horizontally with others, and inwardly with yourself. Maintain and sustain a keen sense of awareness and ongoing discovery about self as well as others. Take good care of you and engage in things that are helpful for your mind, body, soul, and spirit. And remember, out of the heart flows the issues of life. Let's continue to talk about it and continue our journey towards emotional healing. Until next time, bye-bye.
So I need to talk.
You've been in tuned to Talking with Dr. Toy, providing a holistic approach to emotional healing with your host, licensed professional counselor, Dr. Toy Lisa Mitchell. Please connect with me at talkingwithdrtoy.com or Facebook at Talking with Dr. Toy, or email talkingwithdrtoy@gmail.com. I would love to hear your story and hear your heart regarding the issues of life you may be experiencing. Remember, out of the heart flows the issues of life. Let's continue to talk about it. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for listening, and please join me next week for Talking with Dr. Toy.